Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Meta. These are the companies with enough resources to build these frontier models, and they have the ambition to do it. And until someone steps in and stops it, it's just going to be a race. So trust them or don't trust them, it's who we've got, and it's not going to change. These are the companies that are going to be building the future. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Raitzer. I'm the founder and CEO of Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 101 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Raitzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput. We are recording June 3rd around 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Next week's episode is going to be a little different. Instead of dropping on a Tuesday like normal, we are actually going to drop episode 102 on Wednesday, June 12th. So mark your calendars. Next week's episode is not its regular scheduled time. The reason is that Apple is holding its developer conference that Monday, June 10th at 1 p.m. Pacific. So by the time we record our podcast, it would not have happened yet. And we want to make sure we include everything from the Apple conference in episode 102. So we are going to record it on the 11th, and we're going to drop it on the 12th. So again, episode 102 will be on Wednesday, June 12th, not Tuesday, June 11th. Did I get that right, Mike? I didn't confuse
You
myself.
got that. No, you got that right. We're good.
Okay. All right. So today's episode 101 is brought to us by our AI for B2B Marketers Summit presented by Intercept. So that is happening June 6th. So if you're listening to this on June 4th or June 5th, or even the morning of June 6th, if you want, you can still get in for this virtual summit. It is from noon to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It is designed to help B2B marketers reinvent what's possible in their companies and their careers. During the event, you'll learn how to use AI to create dynamic customer experiences, bridge the gap between marketing and sales, build an AI council, and more. Go to b2bsummit.ai. That's B, the number 2, bsummit.ai. Again, there's a free registration option. There's a private registration option that is paid, and there's an on-demand option as well that is paid. But the live free virtual summit is made possible by our presenting sponsor, Intercept. So b2bsummit.ai if you want to join us for that summit. I think we're close to 4,000 people registered already. So it should be an amazing event. The last one we did like this, the AI for Writers Summit, had an incredibly active group of attendees in the virtual platform. So there was lots of connections made, resources shared. So it's a great place to learn and connect. Also, today's episode is brought to us by the Piloting AI course series, a collection of 18 on-demand courses that's designed as a step-by-step learning journey for beginners at all levels, from interns to CMOs. So this series is specifically built for marketers and marketing leaders. More than 1,000 people have registered for the certificate series since it first launched in December of 2022. We did a fully updated version of it this year. Mike and I refreshed and re-recorded all 18 courses at the end of January 2024. So it's freshly updated this year. It's about 9 hours of content, includes quizzes, a final exam, and a professional certificate upon completion. If you're interested in the Piloting AI course series, you can use POD100 as a promo code to get $100 off. Go to pilotingai.com to learn more. There are team licenses and team discounts available as well. So again, pilotingai.com for a step-by-step learning journey to pilot AI in your organization. Okay, Mike, we have lots of OpenAI news, talk about job loss, tons of tech updates, some fundraising, some butting of heads of AI tech titans and researchers. Plenty to get through this week.
Yeah, there's a ton going on this week. So first up, despite a number of recent and ongoing controversies, OpenAI is going very full steam ahead, and not everyone is happy about it because the company announced this past week that it has begun training its new frontier model. So that's assumed to be GPT-5. In a blog post announcing the news, the company wrote, quote, OpenAI has recently begun training its next frontier model, and we anticipate the resulting systems to bring us to the next level of capabilities on our path to AGI. Now, notably, the post that made this announcement was about the formation of what OpenAI is calling the Safety and Security Committee. This is a group responsible for making recommendations to the full board on critical safety and security decisions. One of the committee's first tasks is to evaluate and develop OpenAI's processes and safeguards over the next 90 days, leading to some speculation here that we're at least 90 days away from GPT-5. Now, this Safety and Security Committee consists of current board members Brett Taylor, Adam D'Angelo, and Nicole Seligman, and Sam Altman himself. So, as this company is moving full steam ahead, the ex board members are also causing a stir here. So, ex board members Helen Toner and Tasha McCauley just published an op ed in The Economist calling for OpenAI and other AI companies to be regulated because they have proven themselves unable to self regulate. At the same time, Toner also gave a kind of explosive interview on the TED AI Show podcast, where she said the board took the decision last year to fire Altman for, quote, outright lying to them in some cases and withholding information about certain things going on at OpenAI. She also revealed the board was not informed about the release of ChatGPT in advance. She says they learned about it on Twitter. She alleges that Altman also didn't reveal he owned the AI startup fund and misled the board about formal safety processes in place. Toners said of Altman, quote, for any individual case, Sam could always come up with some kind of innocuous sounding explanation of why it wasn't a big deal or misinterpreted or whatever. But the end effect was that after years of this kind of thing, all four of us who fired him, which is her, Macaulay, D'Angelo, and Ilya Sutskever, came to the conclusion that we just couldn't believe things Sam was telling us. So, Paul, there's a lot to unpack here about OpenAI this week. Let's kind of start with the frontier model that's coming and the Safety and Security Committee. Can you kind of walk us through what this means kind of for the near future of AI, next 90 days or so?
Yeah, I feel like we already knew the frontier model was being trained. I think it maybe is the first time where they just very directly said it, but they've
Hmm.
certainly alluded to it. Like, so I didn't feel like that was massive news, at least saying it was being trained. I think we, again, have just kind of assumed that for a while. The Safety and Security Committee, I didn't read a bunch into because I think it just, at the end of the day, probably isn't that relevant. I don't know. Like, I feel like they're just kind of doing their own thing now. Since we dissolved
Mm.
the super alignment committee, they had to do something. They have to try and keep regulators away and keep the government off their back. And like, they can't just release things. So I don't know who else are you going to put on it, but the board who's supposed to be responsible for this and Sam. So I don't know that there's much to it other than someone has to run it, and those seem to be the people that are left. Now, the board members, Helen Toner, coming out and doing this TED AI interview where she questions Sam's honesty and his business practices. The reality is, like, we have no idea what was happening between Sam and the board, and I think it makes for a great headline that the board didn't know about Chat GPT. And when I first saw it, when I first like watched that clip, I was like, well, oh, okay, that explains why they fired him. And then I thought, wait a second, like, they didn't think ChatGPT was going to be a big deal. Like, maybe they just didn't tell the board because there was nothing to tell them. It was just a continuation of their research efforts. So when I tweeted, like, I shared that Helen Toner interview, and I put, when ChatGPT came out in November 2022, the board was not informed in advance about that. Toner said on the podcast, we learned about ChatGPT on Twitter. And then I said, pretty much tells you what you need to know about how OpenAI leaders viewed the prior board or how insignificant they thought ChatGPT would be. And I actually think it's both of those things. I think that they, at the time, if I remember correctly, Greg Brockman, Greg's the president, I think.
Yep.
Um, he said they thought they were gonna get, like, 5,000 downloads of ChatGPT. They didn't think it was a thing, like, it was powered by GPT 3.5, which the board already knew about. It wasn't like they unveiled some brand new model. They just put out this research initiative to try and give people a chance to engage with a model that the board was already aware of. So I could totally see the leaders of OpenAI not feeling like they really needed to go to the board to tell them they're releasing this thing that they thought was just a research project, basically. So, and then in an interview last week, Sam confirmed this. So he actually did an interview with Nick Thompson, the CEO of The Atlantic, at the AI for Good Global Summit. And he said this exact thing, which was good because that was kind of what I guess is he's like, we, we didn't need to tell the board about ChatGPT. We didn't think it was a big deal. Like
Mm.
this isn't what it wasn't like we were doing some major change in direction. And then he basically took the high road or didn't want to self-incriminate. I don't know about the rest of it. He's like, I'm not going to get into a bunch of specifics on the rest of this stuff. So um I think so, I was thinking about this more this morning before we came on, and I think it's fair to say that by November 2023, when Sam was fired, he had grown to regret how the company was structured under the nonprofit board. And it's safe to say he was probably doing everything in his power to accelerate research, product development, and revenue within the constraints of that structure. Was that frustrating to him? Probably, but there wasn't a heck of a lot they could do about it. Because you have to go back and remember in 2015 when OpenAI was created as a research lab, there were no specific product ambitions. They didn't know what was going to work. The transformer hadn't been invented yet by the Google Brain team, which didn't happen until 2017. They didn't know large language models would scale. They didn't know there'd be a thing. They were working on robotics. They were working on all kinds of things. And so in 2015, when they created this profit structure and this governing board that had all this control, they had no vision of what OpenAI is today. And so I think, if you go back to November of 2023, was Sam doing things that the board didn't agree with? Was he pushing growth forward? Was he raising funding? Was he getting involved in all these other initiatives? Yeah, probably. And was he doing it to spite the board, or was he just doing it because he was trying to figure out how to take advantage of this opportunity within a roadmap that he couldn't have possibly envisioned, 8 years earlier. So then as I was, like, prepping for the show this morning, I happened to come across this Wall Street Journal article, and I think this adds some really interesting context, so we'll put this in the show notes. Um, basically what it did is it took a look at, Sam's extensive investment portfolio and influence within Silicon Valley and beyond. And so it says, like, although Altman is a prolific investor in startups and tech companies, including ones like Helion, which is working on nuclear fusion, and Reddit, which he owns 7.6% of, which is valued at $754 million. So Reddit's stock recently jumped 10% when OpenAI announced a partnership to bring Reddit's content to ChatGPT. So his mounting list of side projects like Reddit and Helion and all these other things have potential conflicts of interest, which were cited by the board when he was fired. So the Wall Street Journal article says some of the directors who ousted Altman felt he was giving them so little information about the size and scope of his startup holdings that it was becoming impossible to understand how he might personally benefit from deals being pursued. So he has been quietly a major investor for more than a decade. Again, according to the Wall Street Journal, in 2019, he was asked to resign from Y Combinator, where he was the president, after partners alleged he had put personal projects, including OpenAI, ahead of his duties as president. So when he stepped aside as Y Combinator is when he took over as CEO of OpenAI. Um, Quote, Altman's arrangement, where much of his wealth is tied up outside ventures, but not OpenAI, pushes the boundaries of traditional corporate governance. According to tech lawyers and venture capitalists, most startup founders have their wealth tied to their companies, fueling motivation to make their companies succeed. Few are ever in a position where they stand to make more money by benefiting the business on the other side of the table. I had forgotten about this one, but Sam's actually a major investor in Humane, the AI
Mm.
pin that is, now trying to find an exit. Um, he holds 15% of the equity in Humane, which was using OpenAI technology to do what it was doing. So my overall take here is like Sam is wildly ambitious. He is a shrewd investor and business person. He is aggressive with a long history of deal making and placing big bets on hyper growth companies. Those aren't qualities that align well with a conservative board structure that limits his ability to do what comes natural to him. So this isn't in any way absolving him or pretending like he may not have done things the former board members claim, but it's who he is. And I can see why things didn't end well.
Mm.
So I think moving forward, what they're trying to do is Sam is going to continue doing what Sam does. He's invested in all these companies. Many of those companies may end up doing deals with OpenAI or becoming partners of OpenAI. And I could completely see how that deal making and those partnerships, which don't fit under traditional, methods and governance, would not play well with a board that is designed to, in many ways, limit and restrict growth and innovation in favor of safety and security. So I think that seeing this new safety and security committee is really just a prelude to a much um, less limited version of Sam Altman and OpenAI that are going to favor growth and innovation and accelerated development ahead of everything else because that is Sam's MO. And as long as Sam's CEO, I think that that is what OpenAI is going to do.
So, kind of given these details, like how confident are we that OpenAI is going to safely usher in this next wave of powerful AI? Call it AGI, or even if we don't get to AGI.
I have no idea. I mean, if I was forced to put like percentages to things, I would be in the middle, I guess. Like,
Mm.
I just don't know. I mean, I think I said on the last episode, we have no choice but to trust these companies right now. So, Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, Meta, XAI, we'll talk about like these are the companies with enough resources to build these frontier models, and they have the ambition to do it. And until someone steps in and stops it, it's just going to be a race. And they're going to do, they're going to have safety committees and they're going to have interpretability studies and they're going to do all these things. But at the end of the day, it's a capitalistic society and they're going to race forward and build the biggest models possible and the most powerful models possible. And as a society, we just basically have to figure out what that means because I don't see an end in sight to what they're doing, and they don't see an end in sight to the ability of these models to keep getting bigger and smarter. So trust them or don't trust them, it's who we've got, and it's not going to change. These are the companies that are going to be building the future.
All right. So, our second big topic today is we're kind of starting to see more commentary and concern around AI's impact on jobs. So, first up this past week, Elon Musk said AI is going to take all of our jobs. Quote, probably none of us will have a job, he said at Viva Tech 2024 in Paris, where he was describing a future where jobs would be optional thanks to AI. However, he did say for this future to come to pass, there would need to be, quote, universal high income, which he did not elaborate too much on. Second, the CEO of Klarna, a fintech company, is facing some backlash after posting about how AI is helping his company by essentially replacing the need for humans. Sebastian Siemiatkowski posted on X all the ways that AI was helping his company save an estimated $10 million in 2024, including saying, quote, we're spending less on photographers, image banks, and marketing agencies, he wrote. Our in-house marketing team is half the size it was last year, but is producing more. He also said the company cut external marketing agency expenses by 25%. He later removed this post after overwhelmingly negative responses online. Now, third in kind of these threads coming together around job fears, McKinsey also weighed in on AI's impact on jobs with some new research, saying, quote, our updated modeling of the future of work finds that demand for workers in STEM-related healthcare and other high-skill professions would rise, while demand for occupations such as office workers, production workers, and customer service representatives would decline. By 2030, in a midpoint AI adoption scenario, up to 30% of current hours worked could be automated or accelerated by generative AI. Now, last and certainly not least, we also saw a fantastic article come out from Avital Balwit, who is the chief of staff to Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei. And it's called My Last 5 Years of Work. And in it, she makes some really bold predictions about where this is all going, saying, quote, I am 25. These next 3 years might be the last few years that I work. I am not ill, nor am I becoming a stay at home mom, nor have I been so financially fortunate to be on the brink of voluntary retirement. I stand at the edge of a technological development that seems likely, should it arrive, to end employment as I know it. She then goes on to detail how working at Anthropic has convinced her that increasingly powerful AI models are going to lead to widespread automation of, quote, every economically useful task, and that she expects AI to first excel at any kind of online work. In closing, she considers kind of the mental and emotional effects this is going to have on workers in a post AGI world where their work is no longer needed. So, Paul, it kind of seems like we're certainly hearing more commentary around this subject from a lot of different sources. Like, are we starting to kind of see real reasons to worry here?
I hope we're starting to see a sense of urgency to have the conversations. Like that's kind of my big thing. So I feel like the Klarna CEO is saying the quiet part out loud. I
Mm,
have sat in executive meetings and board meetings over the last 12 to 18 months, and these are the exact conversations that are happening. How do we cut agency costs? Do we need as many outside agencies? Do we need to spend as much with our outside agencies? Um, are we able to bring in-house now with our team, do what the agencies were doing so we don't have to reduce staff? Maybe we just cut the outside agency budget, we keep the people, and the internal people can now do the work of the agencies. I've gotten lots of questions and discussions around how do we grow without hiring? So
mm,
maybe it's not reduction of workforce, it's we can now achieve our growth goals without having to bring more people on board. There are absolutely the discussions, though, of do we need as many humans doing the work? So, if we're not in a massive growth mode and we don't have plans to introduce new products and services, or there's a demand for more of what we do we need as many people doing the work? Do we need as many SEO people, as many writers, as many accountants? Like these are the discussions that are happening, whether you think they are or not, or you haven't been privy to those conversations. I can tell you right now they're happening. Now, is that the right path? I don't know. Like what we're going to do as like what I believe is every company gets a choice about how you take advantage of what AI is going to enable: efficiency, productivity, creativity, innovation, better decision making. Like all of those benefits can be to the benefit of your people, or it can be to maximize profits and productivity, often in lieu of the people. So, what we will do as a company is we will continue to grow, needing to hire fewer people to achieve those growth goals. So, as a team of 7 at the Institute, we are probably more productive than what my agency was at its peak, which I think was around 19 people. I would argue that with a staff of 7, we outproduce the team of 19. Now, that's nothing against the team of 19. I sold that agency in 2021. If we had today's technology with that team of people, we probably
mm,
could have 2x revenue without having to make a hire.
mm,
So I think most responsible organizations will take a human-centered approach to this and say, yeah, the AI is driving efficiency and productivity, and we're going to keep the people we have. They're going to become more efficient, more creative, more productive. We're going to keep growing. We just don't need to hire as many people moving forward as we would have. So I think that's kind of a best case scenario in many cases. But, this article, that you mentioned, from Avatar, I saw this when today's Monday. This was Sunday morning or Saturday morning. I think I saw this. Yeah, it was Saturday morning. So I read this and it definitely like it was one of those articles you start like, God, this is a really smart article. And
mm.
I did find myself wondering if she used Claude Opus to help in writing it. Um, but just based on her resume and history, like I did a lot of research, one to make sure it was a real person. Like, because I first saw this, I was like, okay, is this actually the chief of staff to Dario Amodei? Like, this is interesting. And so I went and kind of researched who she was and saw she was a Rhodes Scholar, and it looks like she came up in actually communications at Anthropic and then eventually
Mm,
moved into the chief of staff position. But she hasn't updated her LinkedIn with that information. So I had to go digging to make sure, she was who it appeared she was. So anyway, when I read the article, I was like, "Gosh, I don't we gotta talk about this on a future episode." And then I went ahead and put it on LinkedIn, and the response was so overwhelming right away that I messaged Mike, and I was like, "Hey, we gotta make this a main topic, like, today," because I think it strikes a nerve with people, and it's a really important discussion. So I'll just read what I put on LinkedIn, and then we can see if we have any other, follow-on conversations from here. So what I wrote was, I spend a reasonable amount of my time these days considering the future of work and talking with business and education leaders who are beginning to ponder the topic with a greater sense of urgency. I'll start by repeating what seems to be my most common refrain: no one really knows what happens next. That is the only thing about the next 2 years and beyond that I can say with a high degree of confidence. The rest of what I think and what leading AI researchers, entrepreneurs, and economists believe are varying degrees of educated guesses and theories. Some are likely more directionally correct than others, but that's the point. We need to start having more serious discussions about potential paths AI could take business, education, the economy, and society as its capabilities and impact grow with each new model that is released, GPT-5, 6, 7, etc. Assuming everything will stay status quo or that AI will only affect gradual change, like other general purpose technologies before it, will likely lead to suboptimal outcomes for the leaders who choose that path. We need to consider different perspectives and ideas, especially from people who are on the inside of the frontier AI model companies, such as Anthropic, Cohere, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Mistral, OpenAI. For example, this piece in Palladium magazine from Avital Balwit, a Rhodes Scholar and Chief of Staff to Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, is one of the best articles on AI I've read. And then I went on to quote a couple of excerpts. I work at a frontier AI company. With every iteration of our model, I am confronted with something more capable and general than before. The general reaction to language models among knowledge workers is one of denial. They grasp at the ever diminishing number of places where such models still struggle, rather than noticing the ever growing range of tasks where they have reached or passed human level. Many will point out that AI systems are not yet writing award winning books, let alone patenting inventions, but most of us also don't do these things. I thought this next paragraph was really important. The economically and politically relevant comparison on most tasks is not whether the language model is better than the best human. It is whether they are better than the human who would otherwise do that task. But these systems will continue to improve at all cognitive tasks. The shared goal of the field of artificial intelligence is to create a system that can do anything. That's sort of like a very broad blanket statement about the pursuit of AGI, but we can touch on that another time. I expect us to soon reach it. If I'm right, how should we think about the coming obsolescence of work? Should we meet the possibility with its loss with sadness, fear, joy, or hope? The overall economic effects of AGI are difficult to forecast, and here I'll focus on the question of how people will feel about the work. So, my main takeaway here was anyone who, and I've said this before on the show, but like to Elon Musk about like, oh yeah, we're all just gonna be out of jobs. Um, Anyone who makes a definitive statement about this stuff, like very confidently with conviction stating 2 years from now, this is what it looks like. Um, they're either intentionally exaggerating to make a point, which is what I would consider probably Elon at this
Mm,
point, given his history of sort of exaggerating outcomes in a shorter time period than normal. Um, Overconfident in their own point of view about the future, or intentionally misrepresenting reality for some reason, potentially financial gain. So this is again the thing I think we need to recap, and we're going to touch on this in one of the topics in rapid fire about Musk, Jan LeCun, and Jeff Hinton. The people that are leading the research, building these companies, they can't agree on any of this stuff, and like the leading economists can't agree on this stuff. Like you have to develop your own point of view. You have to develop some conviction about what you think is likely happening. And maybe you have A, B, and C options there. You have a couple of contingency paths. And you have to start thinking about that. So if you're a leader, if you're the CEO of a company, or you're building your own business, or you're even leading a department, you have to start to form an opinion about what you think is going to happen next so you can start preparing it that way, like doing impact assessments on your teams and things like that. Um, we can't just deny that it's happening. And I thought that that was one of the real key aspects that caught me was that this quote from her article about the general reaction to language models among knowledge workers is one of denial. I
Mm,
think that is very, very true. I think
mm.
most people just choose to deny that this is happening, that it's going to be disruptive in the very near future, and they just go about their lives each day. And I just don't think that that is the best path forward. I don't agree with Elon that it's just going to, like, in 2 years, like, it's just going to do all of our work for us or anything like that. But I also think that it would be naive to say it's not going to have a disruptive impact. And I think what the Klarna CEO is saying is probably what a lot of CEOs are thinking right now. And they're watching that and wondering if that is in fact true and what it's going to mean to them.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap this up, I'm curious, like, was the sentiment of the comments you got? What kinds of things were people saying in reaction to this?
Yeah, there was, I mean, so at the time of us recording this, there was over 55 comments to this post and it had 15,000 impressions, which again, I posted on a Saturday morning. So that's a lot, like for an average post for me. And it definitely got people thinking. And I think a lot of people appreciated the perspective. I think
Mm.
a lot of people shared the idea that it's important we're talking about this stuff, that there maybe isn't enough conversation around this. And it was a pretty diverse group of people, like different backgrounds, practitioners, leaders, government, people involved in government, people involved in education. So I think that this post, her article, not necessarily my LinkedIn post, but her article and her positioning really resonated with people. And I think it definitely triggered the kind of conversation that I was hoping it would,
Mm.
that maybe we can start having these important conversations and working through scenarios of what possible outcomes may be.
So, for our third main topic today, we're going to do something a little different because there are just so many updates happening that we're going to do kind of an AI tech roundup of a ton of major updates from some leading tools and technologies, and then kind of talk through these. So, I'm going to run through them all and then kind of get your thoughts on them, Paul. So, first up, OpenAI is adding advanced features to the free version of ChatGPT, including the ability to get responses from the web, analyze data, use images, use files, and access GPTs. These are all features previously only available to ChatGPT paid users. And OpenAI is also formally relaunching its robotics team, which it had previously shut down. AI search startup Perplexity is also in talks to raise about $250 million at a $3 billion valuation. And they just released a new feature called Perplexity Pages. And this generates entire shareable pages on any topic from the searches and the research you do with Perplexity. Meta is considering a paid version of its AI assistant called Meta AI. The assistant would just be a more advanced version of the currently free assistant available right now. And according to some reporting out there, the company is now confirmed to be actively developing AI agents. With Anthropic, they have announced that Claude can now use tools by interacting with external services and APIs. And Anthropic is making waves by hiring Jan Leike, who is a leading AI researcher we talked about recently, who left OpenAI's super alignment team. Leike will lead a new super alignment team within Anthropic. IBM, who we haven't mentioned in a while, had its annual Think conference and announced a number of new AI updates, including a new class of its Watson X AI assistants, including several new coding assistants. They announced something called IBM Concert, which is a new Gen AI tool that gives you AI driven insights across a client's portfolio of apps. And IBM also announced that it is open sourcing its Granite family of language and code models. Fable Studios has formally started to release Showrunner, which is an AI app that you can use to generate your own AI TV shows from prompts. And last but not least, popular AI music generation tool Suno has released version 3.5, which allows you to make up to 4-minute long songs. So, Paul, maybe first talk to me about, did any of these updates really stand out to you the most?
Yeah, so the robotics one with OpenAI is interesting. That was one of their big bets early on, in the early days of the research lab when they weren't sure what direction they were going to go. They ran into the limitations of the hardware side, but also just the lack of intelligence. So, the language models have enabled us to now embody the intelligence within the robots. We talked about this in episode 87 and some of the other episodes. They've got a deal with Figure, which is one of the big robotics companies where they're basically embodying ChatGPT within the robot. You're going to see the same thing with Optimus from Tesla. They're going to embody Grok, which is we'll talk about Grok in a minute, but Grok is the language model that'll be embedded within Optimus. And I assume, hope that also probably very near future, Grok will be embedded within Teslas. So you have an intelligent assistant in your car. So that's interesting that OpenAI is going to kind of move back not only into doing deals where they're going to embed their intelligence into other people's robots, but maybe build their own. Anthropic, don't sleep on the idea of tool use. That is a huge play. OpenAI is pursuing it. Every research lab is pursuing it. We will probably hear about that with the Apple conference, although they probably won't refer to it that way. But being able to access different apps on your phone to use them as tools to complete activities is something that everyone is working on. So Anthropic doing that is one of the key unlocks to the next generation of language models. The showrunner stuff from Fable, if you haven't
Yeah.
seen that, that's some crazy stuff, man. I think we talked about that last year when it first came out. They did that demo with South Park where they created an episode of South Park and they trained it on like 1,000 plus characters and all these scenes and everything. But their vision for the future is personalized shows. So instead of Netflix, where you go in and pick an existing show, you'll go in and just say, I want to watch something like themed kind of like a Harry Potter, but I want it to be set in the Lord of the Rings land, and I want these kinds of characters, and like go, and it'll just like build you a show. So it's this idea of like personalized content on demand, but like long form entertainment. And then the other thing is they envision this as a way to train AGI, but these characters can
Mm,
live within these environments and interact with each other and learn from each other. And that this is actually a path to achieving AGI because the agents live within an environment where they're learning their physical surroundings, and it's crazy. So, yeah, that's one of those that I would go spend a little time if you're interested in this stuff, um, looking at Showrunner and Fable Studios. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and just as a connecting the dots moment there on episode 86 in early March, we talked about kind of how one of the main topics was how AI was going to maybe threaten creators. And in that, I believe it was Netflix, and Netflix executive was like, look, this is an existential threat to what we do, this
Yeah.
exact type of thing of people being able to generate their own content that could be where Netflix themselves goes as well.
Yeah, I would think this company will get acquired by, like, a Netflix or a Disney or somebody like that.
Yeah.
I think, like, we don't talk as much about it, on the big, movie studios and production companies, but like Disney's working on this stuff too. There's no way they're
Mhm.
not. And but imagine being able to do this with licensed Disney characters. So, be able to create your
Yeah.
own, episodes, spin-offs of popular movies and shows and things like that. So yeah, I think it's reasonable to assume that the future of entertainment is gonna be you creating your own personalized shows that you could then share with people if you wanted to. Like, so maybe I create a whole, series of stuff. It's kind of like I don't even think about this before. It's like the Roblox for entertainment. So where you
Yeah.
can go into Roblox and create your own games and share them. I think you're going to be able to do that with content like this. We're doing it with songs. You're going to be able to do it with shows.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be consumer generated through prompts, and then you can keep it to yourself or you can share it out.
All right, let's dive into some rapid fire here. So, first up, we've got some news about Elon Musk's AI company, XAI. Their flagship product is Grok, and they just announced a whopping Series B fundraising round that is total of $6 billion raised, and it has participation from top investors like Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia Capital. After this round, XAI's valuation is now $24 billion. So this almost immediately catapults them into the top ranks of AI startups that have raised the most money. So for some context, Anthropic as of right now has raised just slightly more at about 7 billion. OpenAI so far has raised 13.5 billion. In an announcement about the funding, XAI said, quote, "The funds from the round will be used to take XAI's first products to market, build advanced infrastructure, and accelerate the research and development of future technologies." The information has some details on those infrastructure plans because they recently reported that Musk told investors that XAI will need 100,000 specialized semiconductors to train and run the next version of Grok, and that he plans to string these chips together into a single massive computer. He's calling this a, quote, gigafactory of compute, a term he borrowed from Tesla's large scale manufacturing facility. So, Paul, like we've known XAI is a force, though just getting started kind of in the world of AI, but this is pretty significant. I mean, how does this change or evolve the AI landscape?
The the thing you cited about the publication reporting, he told investors, yeah, he went ahead and tweeted that last night. So he said, given the pace of technology improvement, it's not worth sinking 1 gigawatt of power into H100s, being the current version of NVIDIA chips. The XAI 100,000 H100 liquid cooled training cluster will be online in a few months, meaning he's saying, yes, we're doing the 100,000 thing and it's going to be ready to go in the next few months. Then he said the next big step would probably be about 300,000 B200s, which is the next generation of NVIDIA chips, with CX8 networking next. I don't know what CX8 networking is. Next summer. So he's basically out there like, yeah, we're going all
Mm,
in. It's significant because of who he is. He obviously has the backing to raise as many billions as he wants. He has the ambition to do really big things. He has the other companies that would benefit from achieving these, and he has a grudge that he still holds against Sam Altman and OpenAI. And I wouldn't underestimate um, the motivation of vengeance for him. And I think he absolutely wants to build a bigger, more powerful, more influential
mm.
research lab than and company than OpenAI. And so all those things combined, you got to pay attention. Like I think Grok is still not like that relevant to what we're doing. Like as a business person, Grok probably doesn't have any real significance to you at the moment. You're not really considering it as an alternative to ChatGPT or Claude or anything.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean his ambitions won't make it a big part of the story in the future.
So, in another topic hitting the news this week, Jan LeCun and Jeff Hinton are both people we've talked about a bunch on the podcast. They're both considered godfathers of modern AI, thanks to their research contributions and work in the field. And both are back in the news this week. Jan LeCun, who is chief AI scientist at Meta, for one, has spent this week in a bit of a online war with Elon Musk on X. This all started when LeCun posted a snarky response to Musk, who had posted an advertisement of careers at XAI. LeCun said, "Join XAI if you can stand a boss who claims that what you are working on will be solved next year. No pressure. Claims that what you are working on will kill everyone and must be stopped or paused. Yay, vacation for 6 months." Claims to want a, quote, maximally rigorous pursuit of the truth, but spews crazy ass conspiracy theories on his own social platform. So, as I'm sure everyone here
It's great.
can predict, this spiraled immediately out of control. um, LeCun and Musk traded a bunch of barbs on a lot of different topics. At the same time, LeCun is also drawing some attention for an interview with the Financial Times, where he said that large language models will never be able to reach human intelligence and that radically different approaches to some type of super intelligence are needed before we can move forward there. And then Hinton, who left Google over concerns about AI safety, gave a wide ranging interview at the Royal Institute of Great Britain, largely on large language models. And in it, he noted that Ilya Sutskever, formerly at OpenAI, was, quote, basically right about AI scaling laws by preaching that just making larger models was the way to make models more intelligent. So, Paul, you had kind of alluded to this before, lots of conflicting opinions in the world of AI, lots of drama in the world of AI. You followed both of these people since the very beginning. Can you kind of walk us through why all this matters and kind of why we're hearing from them now?
So I've mentioned before on the show one of the ways that I kind of like keep up with this stuff in real time is I have notifications turned on X. Now, there are 9 times out of 10 when Elon Musk tweets, I wish I didn't have a notification for his tweets, but it's when stuff like this happens where it's like, all right, like it's kind of worth dealing with the rest of the stuff. So Jan and Elon, I both have notifications for both of them. So as this is all happening, I'm kind of like seeing these things in real time. So when I saw Jan's first tweet, I was laughing so hard, and in part because my response was I said Jan has officially activated the Elon, Tesla, and X bots with a single tweet. Might as well turn off those notifications for a couple days. So he knows what he's doing. Like the equivalent of this, if you're not active on X or Twitter and you don't know what I mean by like the Elon, Tesla, and X bots, there are like these bots, maybe some of them are actual people, but nothing he does is bad. Like every single thing, they will come to his defense no matter what. And so I said, doing like what I thought to myself is doing this on Twitter. What Jan did is like walking up to a bully in a park full of his buddies and punching the bully in the nose. Like, the buddies are going to take you out. Like in this case, is Musk's bots, defenders, and on X, but they're coming for you. But you're going to get your shot in before like all the smoke. So that was hilarious. So that now we are 6 days later. This is still going on, and I thought Jan had a great tweet. So this is June 2nd at 10 a.m. We'll put the link in the show notes. So I think it's important to understand the context here. So I'm going to read Jan's tweet, and then I'll offer a little bit of perspective. So he says, my opinion of Elon Musk. I like his cars. I own a 2015 S and a 2023 S, his rockets, his solar energy systems, and his satellite communication system. I also like his position on open source and patents, but I very much disagree with him on a number of issues. I disagree with how he treats scientists. Technology product development may not need openness in publications to advance, but forward looking research sure does. Whether it's in AI, neural interfaces, material science, or whatever, secrecy hampers progress and discourages talents from joining the effort. I also disagree with the hype. I mean, expressing an ambitious vision for the future is great, but telling the public blatantly false predictions like AGI next year, 1 million robo taxis by 2020, AGI will kill us all, it's very counterproductive, parentheses, also illegal in some cases. More importantly, I think his public position on many political issues, journalism, the media, the press, and academia are not just wrong, but dangerous for democracy, civilization, and human welfare. Say what you want about traditional media, but you can't really have reliable information without professional journalists working for a free and diverse press. Democracy can't exist without it, which is why only authoritarian enemies of democracy rail against the media. Finally, he doesn't hesitate to disseminate batshit crazy conspiracy theories as long as they serve his interests. One would expect a technological visionary to be a rationalist. Rationalism doesn't work without truth. This has become particularly concerning since he bought himself a platform to disseminate his dangerous political opinions, conspiracy theories, and hype. He has been quite naive about the difficulties of running the social network, and then it goes on and on. So basically, what he's saying is like, I really like the guy. Like, I respect the guy. Um, but of course, this led to, all these like zero replies to the actual balanced critique. Like I felt it was a fairly balanced opinion. Like he's just kind of stating things that seem sort of obvious.
Mm.
Um, and so it just led to a whole lot of like what aboutism. Like, oh yeah, well, what about Zuckerberg? Or like, what about this? Like no one actually addressing his positions. And so without this becoming like a big critique of Elon or like a political thing, I think Jan's position probably aligns with a lot of people who are afraid to be more vocal on Twitter due to bots and retribution. So Elon is probably the most brilliant entrepreneur of our generation, and certainly one of the leading innovators in human history. His companies and his visions are audacious and inspiring. His brilliance is unquestionable. I love when he tweets about science and technology and space and business, but I hate when he's become so political and that the majority of his tweets are pushing increasingly fringe ideals and beliefs. So my overall feeling is like he's absolutely entitled to these opinions. I just wish there was an option on Twitter to filter out tweets dealing with politics and only get to the good stuff. And this isn't just him. Like I feel this way about the All In podcast. Like I love their business insights, investing insights, economic insights. I hate the politics of it
Mm.
because I feel like politics right now is just so divisive and inflammatory. And I know it's in the United States, and I'm sure it's in other places, but you and I might see it in the United States more than anything. And so I don't want this to turn into any political segment, but I think Jan in some way is trying to tell Elon like how respected and admired he is, and to stop letting the political stuff distract from his visions for a better future for humanity. He's just one of the few people who Elon respects enough, who's willing to take the hits to say it to him on his own turf. Because if Jan does this on Facebook or on Threads, nobody cares. So Jan, I think, is basically just taking one for humanity and saying, like, Elon, man, like you got so many good things going. Like, let's get our eye on the prize here and stop with all this craziness. And so again, like I don't care what your political leanings. Like I would rather not know people's political leanings, honestly, a lot of the time, because I just think it just gets in the way of civil discussion and like logical thinking. And I feel that way about Elon. Like, I don't care what his political beliefs are. Like, it doesn't affect me what he's pushing. And I don't care if it's far right, far left, or somewhere in the middle. I just respect what he does as an entrepreneur and as an innovator. And I want him to keep doing good things for humanity. And so it's distracting to me to like deal with the rest of the stuff. I just kind of like tolerate it because I want to get to the good stuff in the process. So um and then real quick, because I know this is just a rapid fire item, but, on LeCun's thoughts on AGI, I think it's really important people understand here because this is where this divergent happens. So Jan has been for a really long time willing to pursue a different path in AI research. His whole career, he's played the long game, and over time, he's often been proven right. So his approach takes conviction. It takes a fortitude to be willing to be wrong in the eyes of your peers for a really long time. And it doesn't mean that he's right. It doesn't mean that his thoughts about language models and where this all goes is correct.
Mm,
Um, but his track record justifies listening to what he has to say, even when it's contrary to what seems to be accepted beliefs by everyone else. And what he basically is saying is large language models, all this money pouring into these things at OpenAI and Google and XAI, that they are just a distraction to achieving actual human level intelligence and beyond. He says that these language models don't have the ability to, there's four things: understand the physical world, which means just like basic physics of reality. They don't have persistent memory, they can't reason, and they can't plan. Now, there's plenty of people, including Hinton and everyone at OpenAI, who probably wouldn't agree with the memory, reason, and planning things as
mm.
a real limitation. But he's saying they're only doing these things in superficial ways, and we need to approach this in an entirely new path. And he literally told a body of students, do not go into large language models in your job. Like, don't work on them when you get out of college. Work on what's next. So I mean, I guess we could have done this as a main topic, but like that's his basic premise is what he's working on is non-language models, which is ironic considering Meta is building everything around language models right now, but that's not what he's like focused on.
And just to kind of wrap that up, and Hinton, it seems, just appears to disagree and say that LLMs just keep getting smarter.
Yeah, I mean, there was a great interview that we'll put in the show notes where he was talking about a lot of things. It was mostly around like safety and things like that. But yeah, he thinks that they actually seem to understand
Mm,
what they're doing, and he seems to see a path where they're just going to keep getting smarter and keep developing reasoning capabilities and understanding and the ability to plan. And so yeah, it's this is what we always say, like, you can't say anything with, like, 100% conviction that this is what the future looks like because the people at the very forefront of this stuff can't agree on these things, and, that's
right.
why I think it's important to have all these perspectives.
All right. Another rapid fire topic we got up this week is consulting firm PwC is now set to become OpenAI's largest enterprise customer and its first ever reseller. So there's a new deal that PwC has with OpenAI to roll out ChatGPT Enterprise to more than 100,000 employees, including 75,000 US employees and 26,000 UK employees. Now, neither company confirmed how much this deal is valued at, and they didn't share any details yet on what the reseller component looks like. So, Paul, maybe talk to me about the angles here in terms of kind of competitiveness. Like, how does this impact PwC's competitiveness as a consulting firm?
Well, I think it's just where they all need to go. I mean, all these big consulting firms have to go in this direction. If they properly onboard it, if they build the proper change management needed, if they infuse education and training throughout the employee base, then you can see like a Moderna-like effect when we talked about that case study a few episodes ago and their partnership with OpenAI and how it's driving innovation within their organization. So yeah, I think these like AI forward organizations that are looking at ways to infuse this across people, processes, technology, and truly build like comprehensive roadmaps and see this all the way through are gonna they're gonna be really hard to compete with in the future. And that's at a macro level. You can do this at any size company, any industry. Like if you take this really thorough approach, you're gonna outcompete everybody in your industry.
We just learned some new details about Apple's AI privacy plans, and these will likely be things that are discussed during next week's Worldwide Developer Conference. According to reporting from the information, as Apple integrates AI into Siri and other products, it, quote, plans to process data from AI applications in a virtual black box, making it impossible for its employees to access it. Over the last 3 years, the company has been working on a project known internally as Apple Chips in Data Centers, ACDC for short, that enables this type of black box processing. So the information says, quote, if this approach works, it will allow Apple to integrate AI into its products without threatening its longstanding promise to keep its user data private. Now, at the same time, we're also seeing that Apple and OpenAI have successfully closed that deal we referenced on a previous podcast to include OpenAI technology in Apple software. So, Paul, as we get closer to Worldwide Developer Conference, we're getting more and more hints about Apple's AI strategy and approach. Like, how do you see these latest details fitting into that picture?
I just still think Apple can end up being a major winner in all of this. Like they've been very low key behind the scenes,
Mm.
but they've been infusing AI for 15 years into their phones. I don't think that most people, most investors, most business leaders probably fully comprehend all the competitive advantages that Apple holds here, but the ability to enable these models to function on device without having to go to the cloud potentially, to run efficiently, to connect all of your apps, to build intelligence that lets you not only talk to all of your apps but interact with them and have them take actions for you. Like if they go all in on this, which I think they are,
Mm.
and they have the right vision for how to execute this on the iPhone and what the next whatever the next generation iPhone looks like and functions like. I just think that they can do what they often do, which is show up late to the party and dominate it. And because they just have so many advantages with their distribution, with their technology, with their supply chain, their manufacturing prowess, their access to data, their ability to keep the data safe. Like it's just I don't think people really comprehend how big of a role AI Apple can play in the next, you know, 3 to 5 years of the story of AI.
So in the shorter term, Google is having another bad week. So they had a bunch of controversy around AI overviews, and now they've had a major document leak. So thousands of documents were leaked on GitHub and earlier in May shared with SEO leader Rand Fishkin. And these documents provide an unprecedented look at how Google's ranking algorithm may work. A lot of the leaks confirm kind of what SEOs have already suspected. Things like, hey, link diversity and relevance matter, successful clicks on your content matter. The documents did not reveal kind of the holy grail of how all these different factors are weighted in the algorithm. However, they also made Google look really bad because there were things in the documents that appear to outright contradict public statements that Google has made. Fishkin wrote about the leaks, quote, many of their claims directly contradict public statements made by Googlers over the years. In particular, the company's repeated denial that click-centric user signals are employed, denial that subdomains are considered separately in rankings, and denials of other features. And this even led Fishkin to say he worries that Google's much cited EEAT guidance, this is in SEO, how you get high ranking content is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, quote, is 80% propaganda, 20% substance. This comes as Google's VP, head of Google Search, Liz Reed, basically also published an article about AI overviews, completely defending them despite the outcry about them, saying that the feature remains popular and Google is working on fixing a few issues with it. So, Paul, like, how bad is this getting for Google right now?
I mean, honestly, probably outside of like the SEO circles of Twitter and online and people who follow us closely, most people probably have no clue any of this is happening. So I mean, I guess it could be perceived as negative within those communities, and certainly there's plenty of those people who listen to this podcast. So I would encourage you, like, if SEO is your thing and you geek out on this stuff, like you're
Mm,
probably deep in it already and know way more about this stuff than I do. I've never considered myself like an SEO expert per se. Yeah, so I was reading it with interest as anybody probably in the marketing space would, and a lot of what I saw is like, yeah, there's lots in here they probably wish wouldn't have come out, but it's probably not even accurate information at this point. So yeah, I don't know. Like I think it's probably just bad PR and things like that. But I don't know that's fundamentally affecting Google's business. I don't know if their stock price is going to change, one way or the other because of any of this information. Um, and I think the AI overviews is part. Yeah, I'm personally most interested at this point, and I just think it's right now over the last week, like I just keep going back to Perplexity thinking, man, it really is just a better product right now. Like
mm,
it's shocking how often Perplexity just nails exactly what I'm looking for, and how that doesn't happen with Google AI overviews right now. Like that's the one thing I just keep kind of taking out of this right now. So yeah, I think, bad week from that perspective. SEO people are probably having a field day right now,
yeah.
but other than that, I think it's probably not much of a news item to the general public or to Wall Street.
So, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang recently participated in a fireside chat with Stripe co founder and CEO Patrick Collison. And as part of this conversation, he outlined the true size of the AI opportunity ahead. In one segment, he said that AI represents a new industrial revolution where we are essentially, for the first time, manufacturing tokens that represent intelligence in data centers using GPUs. Of course, NVIDIA is at the forefront of building these data centers and chips that produce tokens at scale. Now, Huang says that there is $100 trillion worth of industries that will be built on top of this hardware infrastructure, creating an absolutely unprecedented opportunity. So, Paul, that's a pretty big number. Can you maybe walk us through why this concept is so important to grasp?
Yeah, we talked about this on a couple episodes. I may have talked about episode 87, but in essence, I still just think people underestimate NVIDIA. I went and pulled. I was working on our scaling AI courses that I'm building, and like last Friday, I pulled their 5-year stock chart,
Hmm.
and so on Friday, their stock was at like 1,115 or something a share. The day ChatGPT came out on November 30th, 2022, NVIDIA's stock closed at $169 a share. So from ChatGPT moment until today, it's gone from 169 a share to over 1,100 a share. Now they just announced a 10-for-1 stock split that'll happen sometime later in June, so that the price will drop, obviously. Um, but I just it's gone that far just training the current models. Now, just this is diluting everything that NVIDIA does, but most of their growth has come because of the demand for their chips to do the training of these models.
Hmm.
Well, these models are going to get 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times bigger in the coming years. We just heard, Elon Musk wants 300,000 of their new chips by, next year to start building stuff. So all these big frontier model companies take their funding and they turn around and give it to Jensen and NVIDIA. That's just the training. As intelligence goes into robots, goes into your devices, goes everywhere, where we have intelligence on demand to do everything we do in our jobs and in our personal lives, all of that requires processing. All of that requires compute that NVIDIA builds too. So I feel like we're on the cusp of this intelligence explosion, and all this growth in NVIDIA's stock isn't even accounting for that yet. Like
Hmm.
it's just the demand for their trips to do their chips to do the training that has created this run on their stock and this massive like upward tick in the price. And I just feel like we're scratching the surface of what's possible. Not investing advice. I am not telling you to go buy NVIDIA stock today. I'm just observing that I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what NVIDIA can be as a company. And they're already worth 2.8 trillion or whatever for
Mm.
market cap. It's wild. And I could listen to Jensen talk all day. He just did a talk at the ComputeX conference in Taipei on Sunday, and he introduced a new chip called Rubin, or a new, the successor to their Blackwell chips and
Mm.
data centers called Rubin. He's just, I mean, he may be the most innovative, brilliant, forward-thinking entrepreneur of our time outside of Elon, or maybe on par with Elon at this point.
Mm.
He's just so smart and authentic. The guy's amazing.
All right. And our final topic today, Paul, you recently published a LinkedIn post that got some serious attention about how AI is basically a prediction machine and what that means for knowledge workers everywhere. So you wrote, quote, "The future of knowledge work is telling AI what to predict and knowing what to do with the prediction." And you also said that many knowledge work jobs are a bundle of tasks that largely have to do with making predictions. You then said, quote, "So when evaluating the impact AI will have on your job, team, company, or industry, start by evaluating each job as a series of tasks. Then consider how many of those tasks are making a prediction about an outcome or a behavior. Hint, it's most of them." Can you walk us through kind of what you're saying here and why it matters to knowledge workers?
Yeah, I just don't remember I was doing this that the morning I posted this, but something popped in my mind about prediction machines, which is the book I'd read in 2018. And the main takeaway I had from the book, so actually, like, the way I read is I'll highlight everything in Apple Books is where I read my stuff, and then I'll highlight everything, and then I'll go back and read the highlights. You used to be able to export the highlights, now they don't let you. Um, so I was going back and rereading all my highlights from that book, and the main takeaway I had noted at that time was the future of knowledge work is telling the AI what to predict and knowing what to do with the prediction, which was the premise of that book. And so,
Mm.
like, basically, data goes in and predictions come out is kind of what happens, predictions of outcomes and behaviors. So I gave a few examples, like doctors analyze symptoms, which is the data to predict illness. Lawyers consider legal precedent and evidence, the data to predict guilt or innocence. Marketers assess historical audience behavior, the data to predict future purchases. Sales reps look at lead scores and actions to predict conversions. Like, everything we do. And then I broke it down with, like, an email campaign. It's like the subject line is a prediction on what's going to get them to open. The send time is a prediction on what time someone will most likely open. First paragraph is a prediction for what will hook them to get them to the second paragraph. The call to action is a prediction what's getting them to click. Like, everything we do is a prediction. But the main takeaway here is that the machine doesn't know what to predict until the human gives it a task or a goal.
Mm.
And the prediction itself isn't a decision or an action. The decision requires judgment on what action to take. And that judgment, in most cases, is still humans. It's humans using instinct, intuition, experience, expertise. Those are the traits that give us the ability to tell the machine what to predict, and then the judgment to know what to do with the prediction. So while AI is good at the predictions, especially when it has quality data to learn from, it's human experience and judgment that are essential to guide AI and turn its outputs into optimal decisions and actions. And that, to me, is hope. Like, that means there's plenty
Mm.
for us to do. Like, Elon saying we're getting all the jobs are going to be gone. Well, we got to solve for this. Like, humans are still really important. Our instinct, our experience, our intuitions, like everything we've learned before, our ability to go through these chain of thought, use our reasoning to apply it to judgment. Like, all of these things are needed for the foreseeable future. So basically, like, yeah, I think we're in a good place. Like, we got time to figure this out. And I like Prediction Machines is a great book. Even, 7 years later, it's still a worthwhile read, even though it was written, long before ChatGPT and everything.
All right, Paul, that's a wrap on this week's news. Appreciate you demystifying everything for us. As a quick reminder, if you have not left a review of the show yet, we would very much appreciate it. It helps us get into the earbuds of other people and get in front of even more people with our content each and every week. Also, if you have not checked out our newsletter, please go to marketingaiinstitute.com/newsletter, where we summarize every week all of the news that we covered today, and also all the news that didn't make it into today's episode. Paul, thanks again for going through another wild week in artificial intelligence with us.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And one final reminder, episode 102 dropping on Wednesday, June 12th instead of Tuesday, June 11th. So we can talk about everything Apple, WDC, the developer conference from Apple, whatever it's called. That's happening on June 10th. So thanks again for being with us. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to the AI Show. Visit marketingaiinstitute.com to continue your AI learning journey and join more than 60,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to the weekly newsletter, downloaded the AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken our online AI courses, and engaged in the Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.